I would like to teach you how to cut grey board really easily on your SDX ScanNCut. And it's a little bit of a process, and I'm just going to teach you what I've learned from it, because it's really interesting how, even though it's got an auto blade, you can still be in charge of it. And I think when you're cutting thicker materials, you need to think a little bit more about it. The SDX, it says, can cut up to 3 mm in thickness. That absolutely categorically does not mean it's going to cut 3 mm grey board. So when we're building a three-dimensional project, a piece of storage, a piece of home decor, a mixed media piece, we want to cut 3 layers of 1 mm grey board and then glue them together. The glue gives it more rigidity as well, which is great, but it's not forcing that blade, because the more you force a blade through a dense product, the more likely it is that the rollers can't keep control of it because it's too harsh, and it will twist your mat. And once your mat's twisted and it's damaged in a corner, it's very difficult to get it to load again. So I've got a nice tacky mat. So if you're wondering how to retack your mats, go and watch the previous video that we've done for you. And you need your mat to be the kind of as tacky, so you can literally lift it up with your hand like that. And we're going to then use a really good quality grey board. Now, the one that we sell at Highlight Crafts is the best one that I've found. It's not the cheapest out there, and I'm not going to tell you that it is, but it's a really good quality board, and you'll get a really good finish. So if you're somebody that likes to spend time making something for your home or for a friend or to sell, make sure that you use the best products. It's like a recipe. You buy the best ingredients, you'll get the best taste at the end. It's exactly the same with your crafting. So I've got a piece of 12 by 12 grey board. I'm then going to position it within the black square on my ScanNCut mat. I'm going to gently just press it down like this, because the mat is very tacky now, and it's a different tack to when you get the mat new. It's a different feel to the adhesive, and it's better to have the stencil glue on than not, because it grips it a little bit more. It's not as smooth an adhesive. And then we're going to use the auto blade. And as you can see, compared to the CM machine blade, there's no numbers on it. And that's because it's an auto blade. Now, this blade is quite new. So just from using the SDX and cutting a lot of grey board in my time, I know what works best, I think, for me and for you. So I'm going to teach you what I've learned. So I'm just going to bring on a square first of all, because when you're constructing things like they are behind me, so the storage units, because these are all made out of grey board, you want to just cut 3 layers and then glue them together. Okay, so I'm just going to bring on a square and set that on the mat. I always just bring it a little bit further in from the edge of the mat, just because it gives it a little bit more stability when it's cutting out. If it was cutting right up here, when it came back round, chances are that that little bit that's left behind at the top could start to lift, and then your machine will go, it can't cut it because it's too thick. Because when it's going along and it's drilling down to have a look at the depth, if part of it's lifted off the mat, it will be more than the 1 mm of this grey board. So I tend to use 1000 micron, 1 mm grey board, and we just gently persuade it to cut it. So we're going to load the mat in. Like that. I'm going to make sure that my lever is down in the number 1 position. If the ScanNCut needs you to lift the lever, it will tell you. And then I'm going to go to my please select function, and we're going to press cut. And rather than having it on an auto blade, I'm going to drop the pressure to -1, because that means that we're putting less force on that blade. Now, I know that kind of goes against what an auto blade is. However, an auto blade can read the depth of a material, but it doesn't know the density of it. That's up to you to put the settings in for the density of the product that you're cutting. So if it's something like funky foam, there isn't much density to that at all. But when you come onto something like grey board, there is. So we just need to adjust that slightly. And I'm going to take it down to -1 because I want a gentler cut. I'm also going to put the cut amount on 0.3 millimeters because I want it to do a really gentle cut for me. I don't want it to start trying to force down into that board and cut it in 1 go or 2 goes. I want to build it up slowly. So if you haven't got this, the 0.3mm, then go and do an update on your machine, because you will have it. It's something that they've added in since they launched it. So now what I'm going to do is press OK and start. And it's now going to go and have a look at that grey board. It's going to look at it and drill down and see how thick it is. Then it's going to divide that thickness by 0.3mm, and it should cut this 4 times. And that's fine. And I would rather you did it gently and let it build up, a bit like digging a channel in your garden. You're not going to put your spade down and try and hoist all that soil out. We're going to allow the machine to just gently make that cut slightly deeper each time, but we're going to do it in a very gentle way. Now, where we're using 12 by 12 grey board, because we sell it on Highlight Crafts, you can use A4 if that's what you want to do. The one thing I wouldn't advise is putting a piece of 12 by 24 on a 12 by 24 mat, because quite often when you're cutting a lot and the blade's going horizontally, vertically, horizontally back up, if your mat isn't absolutely tacky enough, it can move slightly. And by the time you've got to the bottom of a 12 by 12 mat and go back, a 12 by 24 inch mat rather, and go back up to the top, chances are it might have moved slightly because it's had a lot of force going in different directions. So just, you know, think about that. Just do it in smaller pieces rather than cutting everything at once. So now it's telling me that it's finished. So I'm going to just lift this and make sure that I've got a good cut, which I have. And then going to unload this. And then we've got our perfect square of 1mm grey board cut precisely and very gently, and giving us that perfect flat edge, which is exactly what we want when we're going to be gluing a few pieces together to make it really rigid and really strong. So that, my friends, is how you cut grey board on your SDX machines.